There was a time when going to Magic Kingdom meant a day of wonder with manageable lines and an experience that felt like it was designed around you. That time has been replaced by 90-minute waits, phone apps, surge pricing, and the distinct feeling that you are being optimized rather than entertained. This is the rise and fall of Magic Kingdom, a crowd management crisis. The park that Walt built. Magic Kingdom opened on October 1st, 1971, and it was, by almost any measure, an improvement on everything Walt Disney had accomplished at Disneyland in California. The Florida site was enormous compared to Anaheim. Walt had secretly purchased roughly 27,000 acres of Central Florida land through dummy corporations, giving him room to build not just a park, but an entire resort universe insulated from the commercial encroachment that had surrounded Disneyland on all sides. Magic Kingdom was the centerpiece, and it was designed with a kind of confident civic ambition that reflected Walt's belief that America could engineer its way to a better future. The park's layout was borrowed from Disneyland but scaled up and refined. Main Street USA served as the entry corridor, funneling guests towards Cinderella Castle, significantly larger than Disneyland's Sleeping Beauty Castle, and the themed lands radiating around it. The underground utility corridor, the Utilidor, allowed cast members to move through the entire park without crossing themed areas, keeping the storytelling seamless in a way Disneyland's surface-level cast member movement couldn't always manage. It was the kind of operational planning detail that guests would never notice but would feel in the accumulated coherence of the experience. Opening attendance was strong immediately. In its first year, Magic Kingdom drew over 10 million visitors, an extraordinary number for a brand new theme park, and a sign that Disney had correctly identified Florida tourism as an enormous opportunity. By 1980, annual attendance had climbed toward 13 million. By the peak years of the late 1980s and through the 1990s, Magic Kingdom consistently ranked as the most attended theme park in the world, a title it would hold for decades. Walt Disney himself died in December 1966, 5 years before his Florida park opened. He never saw Magic Kingdom operational, but the park that opened in 1971 carried his direct fingerprints on nearly every major decision. The scale, the land acquisition strategy, the underground service network, the themed land structure. Roy Disney, Walt's brother, pushed the project through to completion before dying himself in December 1971, 2 months after opening day. The early park experience was defined by a particular philosophy. Once you paid the gate price, the park was yours. Rides were included. Shows were included. Parades were included. The value proposition was clear and uncomplicated, and it created a kind of democratic access to the experience that Walt had explicitly intended. Crowd management in these years was essentially about staffing efficiently and keeping attractions running, not about engineering pricing systems to manipulate who stood in which line. Through the 1980s and 1990s, Magic Kingdom's attendance growth was driven by the continued expansion of Walt Disney World as a resort destination. Epcot Center opened in 1982, Disney's Hollywood Studios opened in 1989, and Animal Kingdom opened in 1998. Each new park added to the resort's total drawing power while also distributing some crowd pressure away from Magic Kingdom. Annual pass programs grew significantly during the 1990s, creating a Florida resident base of regular visitors that smoothed attendance patterns across the year. The park's infrastructure, its pathways, plazas, and ride capacity, was built and periodically expanded to serve this growing base. Though the expansion always lagged somewhat behind the demand curves, the Fastpass experiment, free and then not. For the park's first 3 decades, crowd management at Magic Kingdom was simple in concept, if not always in execution. You waited in line. Popular attractions during peak season generated substantial waits. Space Mountain and Big Thunder Mountain Railroad could run 2 hours on summer days, and the classic dark rides in Fantasyland had waits that surprised first-time visitors who assumed anything involving flying elephants and singing dolls wouldn't attract much interest. The wait-in-line model had an honesty to it that later systems would not. Everyone's experience was governed by the same rules. The family that arrived when the park opened got to the ride first. The family that arrived after lunch dealt with longer lines. Crowd management was a product of guest behavior and efficient park operations, not a revenue source. In 1999, Disney introduced Fastpass at its parks, a free system that allowed guests to return to a popular attraction during a designated window and use a shorter express queue. The mechanics were straightforward. You walked to the Fastpass machine near the attraction, inserted your park ticket, and received a printed slip with a 1-hour return window. The system had some restrictions. You could only hold one Fastpass at a time, and you couldn't get another until after your existing window began. But it was genuinely free and genuinely improved the experience for most guests. It also gave Disney sophisticated data about how guests moved through the park, which attractions generated the most demand, and how to staff more efficiently. Universal Studios had quietly been running paid line skipping through its Express Pass system since the early 2000s. Disney consistently chose not to charge for Fastpass during this era, maintaining the position that access to the ride queues, all of them, at a pace determined by each guest's choices, was part of what the admission ticket bought. That philosophical position lasted 2 decades and was abandoned in a single business decision in 2021. Fastpass remained in place until 2011, when Disney began transitioning to Fastpass Plus, a digital reservation system that allowed guests to book 3 attractions up to 60 days in advance through the My Disney Experience app. The system launched fully in 2014 and stayed in place until the COVID-19 pandemic closed the parks in March 2020. Fastpass Plus had real advantages over the original system. You could plan ahead, secure reservations for the most popular attractions before you even arrived, and avoid the frantic morning sprint to the Fastpass machines. But it also introduced complications. The 60-day booking window heavily favored on-site hotel guests, who got earlier access than off-site guests. The 3 reservation limit created strategic dilemmas. Do you use your 3 reservations on the most popular rides, or save slots for the rides with consistently shorter waits, where a Fastpass seems less necessary? And the system moved the crowd management experience onto your phone. A shift from a passive process of standing in a line to an active process of managing reservations, monitoring availability windows, and refreshing apps. Some guests loved the control that Fastpass Plus offered. Others found the advanced planning required, particularly for first-time visitors who didn't know which attractions would be most in demand, to be its own source of anxiety. The phenomenon of Fastpass planning guides and Fastpass strategy becoming a cottage industry of Disney travel blogs illustrated how much cognitive overhead the system required to navigate effectively. This was the beginning of the Disney vacation as a planning exercise rather than a spontaneous experience. And that shift predates Genie Plus by years. What Disney didn't do during this era was charge for it. Fastpass Plus was free, and that mattered enormously to the guest relationship. Guest satisfaction research consistently showed that the ability to skip a line, even a simulated planned skip, created real positive feelings about the park experience. Disney was using that goodwill as a crowd management tool without directly monetizing it. The question of whether that was sustainable was answered when the pandemic closed the parks and gave Disney's financial team an opportunity to reconsider every revenue line. That was about to change. Genie Plus, the day Disney started charging for the line. In October 2021, Disney introduced Genie Plus, replacing the free Fastpass Plus system that had been suspended during the pandemic closure. The change had immediate and significant consequences for how guests experienced Magic Kingdom. Genie Plus was not free. It launched at $15 per person per day, a price that applied to every member of your party, every day of your visit. A family of 4 visiting Magic Kingdom for 3 days was now looking at $180 in line skipping fees on top of already substantial ticket prices, hotel costs, and food expenses. And $15 was just the starting price. The system also introduced individual Lightning Lane, a separate, additional charge for the most popular attractions that weren't covered by Genie Plus at all. At Magic Kingdom, Seven Dwarfs Mine Train and other high-demand rides required additional per-person fees ranging from $7 to $22 each. A family wanting to skip lines on the most popular attractions was potentially spending an additional $300 to $400 on top of Genie, plus on top of park tickets. The context matters here. Disney eliminated the free Fastpass system during the pandemic closure. then reopened the parks at reduced capacity and chose not to restore free line skipping. By the time Genie Plus launched in October 2021, guests had been without any line skipping option for about 18 months. The introduction of the paid replacement was framed by Disney as a new feature rather than a replacement for a removed one, a framing that generated considerable cynicism among longtime visitors who understood exactly what had been taken away and what was now being sold back to them. The Bob Chapek era at Disney. Chapek became CEO in February 2020, just weeks before the pandemic closures, became associated with the aggressive monetization policies that defined this period. Genie Plus, price increases, individual Lightning Lane fees, and the restructuring of the annual pass holder program all occurred under Chapek's leadership. When Bob Iger returned as CEO in November 2022, one of the implicit signals his return sent was that the company recognized the guest relationship had been strained. The practical changes under Iger's second tenure have been incremental rather than dramatic, but the shift in tone toward acknowledging crowd management as a guest satisfaction priority rather than purely a revenue optimization opportunity has been real. The fan response was intense and largely negative. Theme park enthusiasts, travel writers, and ordinary guests who had been accustomed to a free system felt the shift acutely. It wasn't just the money, it was the philosophy. Disney was now charging guests for access to a shorter version of the experience they had already paid to access. The park hadn't become less crowded. The mechanism for managing the crowd had just been monetized. The system itself was also genuinely frustrating to use. Unlike Fastpass Plus, Genie Plus allowed no advance planning. Selections could only be made starting at 7 a.m. on the day of your visit. For popular attractions like Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, availability at peak times was gone within minutes of 7 a.m. Guests who weren't fast enough on their phones in the first minutes of the morning were locked out of the Lightning Lane for key rides for the rest of the day. The scramble was real and stressful. It turned our vacation morning into a phone Olympics, one frequent visitor wrote on a theme park forum. My husband and I both had our phones out at 6:59, trying to grab Lightning Lanes while my kids were still asleep. That's not what I thought we were paying for. Price creep and the surge pricing era. Genie Plus at $15 per day was the beginning, not the end, of the pricing evolution. By October 2022, Disney had introduced dynamic pricing to Genie Plus, the same surge pricing model used by airlines and hotels, applied to a theme park's line-skipping service. On peak days, Genie Plus prices rose substantially. By late 2022, holiday season prices for Genie Plus at Magic Kingdom were reaching $29 per person per day. By Christmas 2023, the price had hit $39 per person per day. A family of 4 at Magic Kingdom on a peak holiday day in 2023 could spend $156 just on Genie Plus, before park tickets, before food, before the individual Lightning Lane fees for the rides not covered by Genie Plus at all. This was the same family that in 2015 would have accessed an equivalent line-skipping benefit for free. The park ticket prices themselves had also been undergoing aggressive increases. Magic Kingdom's one-day ticket price fluctuated based on date, but peak season prices by 2023 were reaching $189 per person for a single day. A family of 2 adults and 2 children at Magic Kingdom on a busy day, paying for Genie Plus, was looking at roughly $900 in just tickets and line access, before hotel, food, merchandise, or travel. That $900 figure deserves some context in the history of Walt Disney World pricing. When Magic Kingdom opened in 1971, a one-day adult admission was $3.50, with additional tickets required for specific attractions. By 1981, a general admission ticket was about $12. Adjusted for inflation, these prices were comparable to entertainment costs of their eras. The acceleration of Walt Disney World ticket pricing above the rate of inflation began in earnest in the 1990s and continued aggressively through the 2000s and 2020. The price of a Magic Kingdom ticket more than doubled between 2010 and 2023. No meaningful improvement in the average guest's park experience justified a doubling. What changed was Disney's market power, a global brand with decades of emotional investment, an IP library of incomparable depth, and a captured audience of families who had been told since childhood that going to Disney World was a milestone experience. That market power was exercised to extract significantly more revenue per guest. The guests paid for a while. The accumulated effect of these price increases was measurable in attendance numbers and in guest satisfaction. Disney's own internal research, referenced in various financial earnings calls, acknowledged that satisfaction metrics had taken noticeable hits in the period leading up to the pandemic, and again in the post-pandemic price escalation era. Guest satisfaction and intent to return surveys showed pressure at levels that concerned the company's leadership enough to merit public acknowledgement. Disney executives began speaking openly about the need to balance attendance volume with per-guest revenue. The strategy of fewer guests spending more per visit became explicit company policy. CFO Christine McCarthy noted on a 2023 earnings call that the company was deliberately calibrating pricing to optimize yield rather than maximize raw attendance. In practice, this meant charging more for everything and accepting that some families who had been multi-generational Disney visitors could no longer afford to be. The Genie Plus to Lightning Lane transition. By 2024, the Genie Plus system had generated enough widespread dissatisfaction that Disney made another structural change. In July 2024, Genie Plus was replaced by Lightning Lane Multi-Pass and Lightning Lane Single Pass at Walt Disney World. The new system restored some features that Fastpass Plus veterans had valued. Guests could now make Lightning Lane selections up to 3 days in advance, rather than scrambling at 7 a.m. the morning of their visit. On-site hotel guests got an extended booking window of up to 7 days in advance, recreating the advantage that had been a feature of the old Fastpass Plus system. The change represented Disney explicitly acknowledging that the Genie Plus system's same-day-only selection process had been a significant source of guest frustration. The price remained a significant factor. Lightning Lane Multi-Pass at Magic Kingdom settled into a range of $27 to $39 per person per day, depending on date, continuing the dynamic pricing model that had been established with Genie Plus. Lightning Lane Single Pass, for individual premium attractions, added further per-person charges on top of Multi-Pass, meaning the most in-demand experiences at Magic Kingdom still required layered purchases to access efficiently. The restoration of advance booking did reduce some of the morning phone chaos that had defined the Genie Plus era, but it also introduced a new challenge. Lightning Lane availability for popular attractions at Magic Kingdom started selling out days in advance, meaning guests who didn't book immediately when their window opened were shut out of the premium queue entirely. Off-site guests, whose booking window only opened 3 days before their visit, found themselves competing for inventory against on-site guests who had already been booking for a week. The multi-tier access system created by different booking windows is a direct echo of the class system that Fastpass Plus had also embedded in the guest experience. For the guests who navigated the system successfully, who researched in advance, set alarms, and made their selections within the appropriate windows, Lightning Lane Multi-Pass offered a real improvement in the park experience. For guests who didn't understand the advanced booking dynamics or who couldn't monitor the app closely enough in the days before their visit, the experience of Magic Kingdom during peak periods remained defined by long standby waits and the sense that other guests had bought or planned their way to the front. The crowding problem that pricing alone couldn't solve. Here is the thing about Magic Kingdom's crowd management crisis that pricing changes alone cannot fix. The park is physically small relative to the number of people it tries to accommodate. Magic Kingdom covers approximately 107 acres of themed guest area. It drew over 17 million visitors in 2023, making it the most attended theme park in the world by a significant margin for that year. 17 million guests distributed over 365 days averages about 46,000 guests per day. On peak holiday days, capacity can approach or exceed 100,000. The park's physical infrastructure was designed for a different era of attendance. The pathways between Tomorrowland and Fantasyland, the plaza in front of Cinderella Castle, the bridge from Main Street into the hub. These were sized for the crowds of the 1970s and 1980s, not for the volumes that 21st century tourism, social media visibility, and global brand recognition bring to the park every day. When 50,000 or 70,000 people are moving through 107 acres on a hot Florida afternoon, the physical experience of the park changes fundamentally. The themed environments that are supposed to immerse you in a fantasy world become obstacle courses, navigated elbow to elbow with strangers. One incident that illustrated this concretely occurred after a holiday nighttime spectacular in 2024, when guests reported waiting upwards of 90 minutes just to exit the park. Not to get onto an attraction, not to enter the park, simply to leave. The walkways became so congested that crowd flow nearly stalled entirely, as tens of thousands of guests tried to move through the same bottleneck simultaneously. Guests described feeling genuinely trapped, unable to move forward or backward in the crush. For many, it was the first time a Disney visit had felt physically uncomfortable rather than merely inconvenient. The exit bottleneck at Main Street, USA is a structural feature of the park design that cannot be easily changed. Every guest enters and exits through the same corridor, because that is how the park was designed to work. Main Street leads you in, Main Street leads you out. In an era when the park regularly has 50,000 plus guests on site, the corridor that was designed to create a sense of welcoming arrival also creates a crushing departure. Dining areas overflow during peak periods. The restaurants, quick service locations, and snack stands within Magic Kingdom operate at or near their design capacity for significant portions of the day during busy seasons, creating long waits for food in addition to long waits for rides. Mobile ordering, introduced as a convenience feature, became a necessity for guests who wanted any reasonable chance of eating lunch before mid-afternoon. The experience of navigating the park became primarily an exercise in crowd avoidance and queue management, rather than the immersive, story-driven experience the park's design intended. "We spent more time looking at our phones than looking at the castle," wrote one parent on a Disney fan forum after a holiday week visit in 2023. "Between Genie Plus reservations and dining reservations and checking wait times, it was like project management for a vacation." The park reservation system and its aftermath. Disney's response to attendance pressure during and after the pandemic included implementing a park pass reservation system. Guests with park tickets were required to reserve a specific date at a specific park before visiting. The reservation system was introduced in 2020, when the parks reopened at reduced capacity, and it served a genuine purpose during that period, limiting attendance to safe levels and ensuring the parks could operate under health guidelines. The Park Pass reservation system remained in place well beyond the point where capacity restrictions justified it. Disney kept the requirement through 2024, largely because it gave the company unprecedented visibility into upcoming attendance. Knowing weeks in advance how many people would be at each park on each day allowed for more precise staffing and operational planning. The data was valuable. The guest experience benefit was considerably less obvious. The system also frustrated many guests who found that the park they wanted to visit on the day they could visit was sold out, or that changing plans required canceling and rebooking, or that the additional reservation step created a planning burden on top of an already complex vacation itinerary that included lightning lane reservations, dining reservations, transportation logistics, and the general management of expectations for a multi-day family trip to one of the most elaborately planned commercial environments in the world. The friction was real and documented. Theme park analysts noted that the combination of Park Pass reservations, Genie Plus daily purchases, individual Lightning Lane selections, and dining reservations had effectively turned a Magic Kingdom visit into a multi-week planning exercise, requiring ongoing attention to an app, a calendar, and a budget simultaneously. Guests who hadn't engaged with this planning layer before arriving found themselves significantly disadvantaged relative to those who had, creating a two-tier experience based not on Disney's official pricing system, but on planning sophistication. Disney announced in early 2024 that the Park Pass reservation requirement for most ticket types would be eliminated for dates beginning in early 2025. The elimination of the requirement was broadly welcomed, though the underlying capacity questions it was designed to address didn't disappear with the reservation system itself. Where things stand. Magic Kingdom's attendance in recent years has shown a complex pattern. The park attracted enormous post-pandemic demand through 2022 and into 2023, with guests eager to return after the closures. By 2024 and into 2025, indicators suggested moderation. Disney executives acknowledged on earnings calls that attendance at the domestic parks was running slightly below the surge years, and wait times at Magic Kingdom showed measurable decreases from their post-pandemic peaks. The attendance moderation has multiple plausible explanations. Price increases have priced some families out of the Disney vacation market entirely, particularly as the economy applied pressure to discretionary spending budgets. The complexity of the planning process, managing Lightning Lane reservations, dining reservations, park hours, and transportation has created what some guests describe as planning fatigue. International travel has rebounded strongly since the pandemic, and some domestic tourists who might otherwise visit Disney have redirected their vacation budgets toward Europe or other international destinations. The price of a family of four's 3-day Disney vacation, fully loaded, now competes with the price of an international trip in a way it simply didn't a decade ago. Disney's own analysts have noted that lower Lightning Lane sales appear to be a significant driver of lower standby wait times in 2025 and 2026, meaning that fewer guests are buying the paid line-skipping service, which in turn means fewer guests are being pulled through the Lightning Lane ahead of standby queue guests, which makes standby lines move faster. This creates a counterintuitive dynamic. As the paid service becomes less popular, the free standby experience actually improves. It's possible to read this as the market correcting an overpriced product. The park itself remains extraordinary in many ways. The Tron Light Cycle Run roller coaster, which opened in April 2023 as Magic Kingdom's first major new attraction in several years, is genuinely impressive. A technically ambitious, beautifully themed experience that uses projection mapping and enclosed track design to create an immersive environment. The classic attractions that have defined Magic Kingdom for decades, the Haunted Mansion, Pirates of the Caribbean, Big Thunder Mountain, Space Mountain, continue to deliver the experiences that 3 generations of guests have memories around. These rides work. They have always worked. The environment around them is what has changed. Disney has announced a significant expansion plan for Walt Disney World through the early 2030s, including new attractions and expanded infrastructure across all 4 parks. The company has committed to a multi-billion-dollar investment in the domestic parks over the next decade. The investment represents an acknowledgement that physical capacity limits are real, and that adding entertainment and physical space is the long-term answer to the crowd management question that pricing systems have only partially addressed. More rides mean more throughput. More throughput means shorter lines. Shorter lines mean higher guest satisfaction. The logic is simple. The execution takes years. But the structure surrounding those attractions right now, the pricing model, the app management requirement, the crowd volumes during peak periods, and the physical limitations of a park that hasn't grown in proportion to its attendance, has created a visitor experience that requires significant planning sophistication and financial commitment that the early park did not demand. Walt Disney's original vision for his Florida project included the Epcot City concept, a place where innovation in planning and technology would create the ideal urban environment. He never stopped believing that the problems of a place, even a designed place, could be engineered into solutions. Magic Kingdom's crowd management crisis is, in some ways, the test of that belief applied to the park he built. The problems are visible. The solutions remain unfinished. And that is the story of the rise and fall of Magic Kingdom, a crowd management crisis. If this video resonated with you, whether you're a Disney fan, a former regular, or someone who looked at the prices and decided to go to the beach instead, hit the like button and subscribe. We cover the stories behind the places that shaped how Americans think about leisure, family, and experience. New videos every week.